Well, folks, despite what the media are saying right now, Kamala Harris is not only not running away with the presidential race, this race is effectively a dead heat. Nothing has changed since that sparkling Democratic National Convention. I'll give you the poll stats in just one moment. First, your reminder, you can get 35% off a new Daily Wire Plus membership with code FIGHT at dailywire.com/subscribe. You'll get uncensored, unfiltered, ad-free shows, real-time breaking news alerts, and more. But most importantly, you'll get the truth the legacy media don't want you to hear. Like, for example, the truth that this is, in fact, a dead heat. Take a look at the headline on this Yahoo News YouGov poll. Okay, it's out today. Brand new poll. Here is the headline. A huge surge in Democratic optimism, but no big bounce for Harris after the DNC. Wait, who cares whether Democrats are enthusiastic? The question is, who's winning the race right now? And the very counterintuitive result here is that Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are locked in a statistical tie. But listen to how Yahoo plays this. Quote, in the wake of last week's Democratic National Convention, Americans now think Vice President Kamala Harris has a better chance of winning the November election, 39%, than former President Donald Trump, 36%. Now, who cares about that? They say that's a dizzying turnaround from last month when President Biden was trailing Trump 53-20 rather, on the same question, a 33 percentage point gap. But that is such a low-level question. Who do you think is going to win? Matters significantly less than for whom will you vote. In this poll, Kamala Harris leads Donald Trump by 1 point in a head-to-head matchup among registered voters. 1 point. The margin of error here is 3 points, which means this is a dead heat. It is a dead heat. Not only that, the previous Yahoo News YouGov poll found Harris and Trump tied at 46% apiece, which means she got no bounce from the DNC. Remember, the DNC was the most important thing that has ever happened on this planet. It was beautifully staged. They trotted out Barack and Michelle Obama. They came down from on high, descended upon the people, and brought forth their haloed presences in order to demonstrate just how magical Kamala Harris was. We met the ghost of Joe Biden at that DNC. We brought forth the moldering corpse of Bill Clinton, prostate no longer working, and so he is now desiccating into ruin. And, of course, we saw Tim Walz with his weird sitcom dad, happy, goofy, communist energy. And we saw Kamala Harris, who spoke off a teleprompter. And that was supposed to be a magical moment for the Democrats. And here is the size of their convention bounce. 0. Does not exist. Why isn't that the news? Why isn't the news that this thing is a dead heat? And the answer is the media want you to believe this race is over. They want you to believe this race is over. The reality is Kamala Harris remains unpopular. Today, after some of the most glowing media coverage in the history of media coverage, after the completion of the Democratic media human centipede, Kamala Harris's favorability rating is 47%. Not 60%, not 70%, 47%. By the way, when she entered the race, she was at 40%. So, a minority of Americans like Kamala Harris. And what is her favorability rating among independents? 40%. It was 30, now it's 40. In other words, people don't like her very much. As far as approval of her performance as vice president, 42%. Again, these are not incredibly spectacular numbers for the current vice president of the United States. Democrats are more optimistic because they got rid of the zombie candidate and they put in somebody who is technically alive. But their fresh coat of paint on the crappy jalopy is not doing much for the American people. Again, as it turns out, this poll shows a dead heat. Not only that, some of the other polling that is favoring Kamala Harris, say, for example, the Morning Consult poll. That Morning Consult poll has not moved. It has not moved since before the DNC. And that is after some of the most glowing media coverage ever, according to Morning Consult, not according to me. For the 5th week running, voters remain more likely to say they heard something positive than negative about Harris by a double-digit margin. That has never happened for Donald Trump his entire career. Meanwhile, only 42% of voters hold favorable views of Tim Walz. And these are not great numbers for the Democrats. So, after weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks of sycophantic media coverage, this thing is still a dead heat. That is the actual news story. And that means that Kamala Harris is in real trouble. It's the reason why she is agonizing. It's why her staff is doing Talmudic debate over exactly who should interview her, how, and where. In fact, CNN had a panel just the other night in which they were agonizing over, does she even have to do an interview? Does she? Maybe she doesn't. Maybe she can get away with never doing the interview. Maybe We can actually just encase her in glass and put her in a museum and point at her, and she'll be the president. And we'll never find out what she thinks or whether she has the capacity to speak freely. She is, as another commentator has put it, the AI candidate. She's absolutely artificially generated. At some point, she might have to be a human, but it ain't right now. This is what the CNN panel was advising.
We know her position. She's against fracking. She's against private health insurance. She's against gasoline cars. That's what she told us when she ran for president last time. She doesn't want to talk about those positions. That's why she's stalling it.
And she should do an interview. I'm just politically saying, Brad, and you have to acknowledge that it hasn't been that bad to this point.
She's going to show up.
It is coming.
She'll show up at NPR or somewhere like that, but she's not going to take tough questions. She's going to show up on a network,
and she's going to have a sit-down conversation. She has already said, her campaign has already said that that's going to happen. If you're waiting for the date, everybody else is waiting for the date.
It's a month.
She's actually on the ground. She's doing bus tours across the state of Georgia. She is talking to the voters.
Talking to the voters. No, she's not. She might be talking to the voters technically, but she's not hearing from the voters or answering questions about the voters or anything like that. Again, it is amazing. We are now on day 39 days, 0 questions asked. And now, apparently, we are supposed to be satisfied with an interview that she has now scheduled on CNN. Folks, we're supposed to be fine with Kamala Harris never answering a single question. Well, we shouldn't be fine with that. We also should not be fine with crappy cell phone coverage, which is why you should switch on over to Pure Talk. There's only one cell phone company that gives you free premium access to the media you actually care about. That company is Pure Talk. This might be the best offer Pure Talk has ever offered. Listen to this. When you switch your cell phone service to Pure Talk on a qualifying plan, you get a free 1-year insider subscription to Daily Wire Plus. That is correct. Take advantage of unlimited talk, unlimited text, 15 gigs of data, and mobile hotspot on America's most dependable 5G network for just $35 a month. And you get 1 year free of Daily Wire Plus. The Daily Wire Plus Insider Plan gets you access to our entire library of movies, series, and documentaries, including Lady Ballers, What is Woman, Mr. Bertram, Foundations of the West, that's Jordan Peterson's brand new series, and more. Plus, you get all our daily shows uncensored and ad-free. Now, the only way you can get that special offer is heading on over to puretalk.com/Shapiro. I've been telling you to stop overpaying for your cell phone plan for a very long time. If you haven't yet made the switch over to Pure Talk, now would be the moment. Go to puretalk.com/Shapiro today, switch to a qualifying plan, get 1 year free of Daily Wire Plus Insider. Again, I've been using Pure Talk's coverage for years at this point. It's excellent, crystal clear calls, and again, they don't hate your guts. They actually like you. Go to puretalk.com/Shapiro today. Switch to that qualifying plan. Get 1 year free of Daily Wire Plus Insider. puretalk.com/Shapiro today. Again, the media really don't want her to do this. They really don't. The amount of pressure that's being brought on Kamala Harris to do a solo interview is pretty much zero, which is why it hasn't happened yet. Because if the media pushed a tsunami of coverage on why Kamala Harris is too much of a coward to do a one-on-one interview with, say, Lester Holt, it would happen. But they're not pushing that. And they're not pushing that because they are the recipients of their message from the Democratic Party. They then, as stenographers, put that message out to the American public. There was literally a headline last night on Politico, maybe the most insane headline I've ever seen. Quote, Vance tries to tether Harris to Biden during Michigan rally. What do you mean tries to tether Harris to Biden? It's called the Biden-Harris administration, Politico. She's the sitting vice president of the United States. That's unbelievable. Vance is pouncing on her vice presidency. He's noticing that she's the vice president, trying to tether her to Biden. What do you mean trying to tether? She literally got rid of the person who is her boss, still her boss. She got rid of that guy, took his place, and is only famous because she's in his administration. But it's the Republicans who are noticing. It's our fault for noticing. We're doing noticing. Again, here, for example, is MSNBC's Jose Diaz-Balart saying she doesn't really need to do an interview. I mean, she's already answering tons of questions. We shouldn't pretend she's answered no questions. Well, folks, she's answered no questions.
Yeah, I mean, Basil, obviously reporters are, clamoring for that sit down, but it's also been a line of attack from Trump. Today, he sent out a campaign email underlining it's been 37 days since Biden exited the race and still no Harris interview. To be clear, she has taken questions from the press, just not in a lengthy televised sit down. Does this really, you think, Basil, matter to anyone other than journalists?
Yes, I think it should matter to the American people. And if it doesn't, that is to their great discredit, because they should want some answers on what the prospective president of the United States thinks about things. So finally, the Harris Walls campaign has announced an interview, and it demonstrates what a weakling she is. My goodness. So the interview will be CNN tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern. And you're all excited, right? Like, oh my gosh, we're finally going to get a window into what she thinks about things. Wrong. It is not a solo interview. She will be joined by her babysitter, coach, serial liar, Tim Walz. She couldn't have like a regular interview, one-on-one. She has a double interview. And she is bringing along her vice presidential nominee, presumably to help fill time and grin like a goofy weirdo and make weird hand motions. That's what they're going to do. Okay, she's bringing along a chaperone. She's the presidential nominee, the current frontrunner for the presidency. She has to bring along a chaperone. She can't do a solo interview. She's not capable of doing a solo interview. She can't go on even somewhat friendlies, like say a podcast, say Charlemagne the God. She can't do it. She did it in 2019. She got her ass handed to her. She's terrible at this. So she's bringing along Coach Walz. So if she starts to wander off into word salad land, he can jump in with his communist enthusiasm and jabber nonsensically about how she is joy. That's the entire shtick. Okay, so that is proviso number one. Sure, it's an interview, but it's also with Tim Walz, who is there to eat up time, among other things. Okay, then, proviso number two. The interviewer will be Dana Bash. Dana Bash is not exactly an objective interviewer. There's a reason they're not going with Lester Holt. There's a reason they're not going with Jake Tapper. They're going with Dana Bash because Dana Bash is, in fact, more of a partisan Democrat. She always has been. Here, in fact, is Dana Bash suggesting that Kamala Harris was not and is not the border czar. Yeah, she was. You guys all called her that.
This is the kind of thing that is playing out all over conservative media. I just want to do a little bit of record correcting. There's not record crime right now. Number one, Harris was put in charge, as you said earlier, of combating the roots of immigration. She was not and is not the border czar.
That is the person who will be asking her questions. So that's proviso number two. So proviso number one, she's got a babysitter, Tim Walz, weird sitcom dad. Proviso number two, Dana Bash will be the interviewer on CNN. Proviso number three, it's pre-taped. It's not live. It's pre-taped, which means that presumably the Harris-Walz campaign can exert pressure on CNN to chop out things that make her look bad. So spot the edits, gang. That's going to be the game. Pathetic, but exactly what you would predict. Exactly what you would predict. Again, she has consistently failed when put in live interview situations. So they will not allow her in a live interview situation, specifically because there are many questions she cannot answer. Among those questions, she now proclaims that inflation is running too hot. She's the current VP. Why didn't she fix it? Do something about it. She claims that she wants to be strong on the border. So why didn't you do it? She claims that the United States has a serious housing crisis. So why didn't you fix it? You're the current vice president of the United States. That's the simple question Dana Bash should be asking. Another question she should be asking, why is this guy with you? What do you mean this schlub along with? Why is he here? I mean, we've been told that your vice presidency is completely irrelevant to your positional stances on issues. So what do I care what Tim Walz has to say? By the way, the Harris campaign openly admitted that Tim Walz has also not been allowed to do independent interviews one-on-one with anybody because they are afraid he will say something that is at odds with her actual positions. He doesn't know her positions either. Folks, Kamala Harris does not know her own policy positions. Tim Walz does not know Kamala Harris's policy positions. But if there's one thing that we all know, it's that we are all going to die. I know that was a real right turn right there. But let me explain. You need life insurance. It's just that simple. Enter Policy Genius, the country's leading online insurance marketplace. They are experts at helping you secure your family's financial future quicker than Kamala Harris can change those policy positions. Even if you already have a life insurance policy through work, might not offer enough protection for your family's needs, might not follow you if you leave your job. With Policy Genius, you can find life insurance policies starting at just $292 per year for $1 million in coverage. Some options are 100% online and let you avoid those unnecessary medical exams. Impressive, right? Their platform combines cutting-edge technology with human expertise. You get access to quotes from top insurers, find the best rates, and receive guidance from licensed professionals throughout the process. Remember, Policy Genius works for you, not the insurance companies. Their recommendations are based on your needs, not commission structures. Let Policy Genius help you plan for your family's future, because true peace of mind comes from knowing that you've taken care of what matters most. Be ready for the future with Policy Genius. Head on over to policygenius.com/Shapiro or click that link in the description. Get your free life insurance quotes. See how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/Shapiro. As Frank Fleming over at Twitter, he also works with us at Daily Wire, as he tweeted out, the reason that they're having them both in the room at the same time is they can get their stories straight. You wouldn't want a prisoner's dilemma where they're separated and asked the same question, like, are you for electric vehicle mandates? They might give different answers. She's flipping her positions on and off like a light switch. It's insane. And that's the other thing. Somebody needs to ask her specifically, not Tim Walz. And if he jumps in, Dana Bash needs to say, or she's not doing her job. If Tim Walz jumps in and starts to answer the questions, she needs to say, the question was for the presidential candidate, Mr. Walz. That's what she needs to say. Will she? I highly doubt it. But Kamala Harris needs to answer questions about why she has flipped positions. It's not just whether she has, it's why she has. Was she wrong in the first place, or is she lying now? That is the operative question whenever anybody flips a position. They should have a good justification. They should have a good explanation of why they've shifted their positions. In the last 2 months, or since becoming the nominee, which is not even 2 months, it's like 5 weeks, since Kamala Harris became the nominee, Kamala Harris has sent out her surrogates to flip positions on, among others, the following issues: decriminalizing border crossings, building a border wall, abolishing private health care insurance. She was in favor of the abolition. Now she's against it. Electric vehicle mandates. She was in favor. Now she's against it. Banning fracking. She was in favor. Now she's against it. Opposing more police on the streets. She was in favor of that. Now she's against it. That is all inside the last 5 weeks alone. 5 weeks. Will Dana Bash dig into those issues? Will she play a clip of Kamala Harris on the border wall? Here is Kamala Harris, circa 2019, calling Trump's border wall a medieval vanity project. Now we are told that she is in favor of the comprehensive immigration reform bill brought forth by Senate Republicans and Senate Democrats that would add to the funding for the border wall. Axios headlined that she flip-flopped on the border wall. Here she was in 2019. What changed?
On the subject of transnational gangs, let's be perfectly clear. The president's medieval vanity project is not going to stop them.
It's a medieval vanity project, but now she's in favor of the medieval vanity project. Shouldn't she have to look at that clip? Shouldn't she? Shouldn't she have to look at the clip of herself talking about being the last person in the room on Afghanistan and explain why the pullout from Afghanistan was such a full-scale disaster? Shouldn't she, the queen of the women, shouldn't she have to explain why it was totally fine to leave 19 million women in burqas without an education in Afghanistan? Why that was the wisest and strongest decision she ever made as vice president of the United States? Shouldn't she have to explain her reversal on the electric vehicle mandate? According to the New York Post, despite VP Harris championing outlawing gasoline-powered cars in her Senate days, her campaign claimed Tuesday she's now opposed to electric vehicle mandates. Yet another walkback on behalf of the California Democrat, possibly the biggest one of them all. In a fact-check email, Harris campaign rapid response director Amar Moussa dismissed claims made by former President Trump about the VP's readiness to force every American to own an electric vehicle. Fact, VP Harris does not support an electric vehicle mandate. What that leaves out is that when she was in the Senate, she co-sponsored legislation that sought to ban the sale of gasoline-powered vehicles by 2040. That was the so-called Zero Emission Vehicles Act of 2019. She was a co-sponsor on the legislation. The bill would have forced automobile companies to transition away from fossil fuels by requiring 50% of new passenger vehicle sales be zero-emission cars by 2030, and then that mandate would ramp up 5% every single year. But don't worry, she's not reversing herself. Maybe Dana Bash can ask her about that. Maybe Dana Bash should ask her about the radical increases in taxes that she is seeking. One of the most hilarious things about Democrats talking about increasing taxes, they say, we need to balance budgets. That's the big thing. You know, the reason we're increasing taxes is because we're just spending more than we're bringing in. I don't believe you. You have inflated the currency in order to pay for the greatest spending binge in the history of the planet. Not of the United States, of the planet. We are looking right now at a national debt in the United States that now currently is ordering on $35 trillion. $35 trillion. By the end of this year, that national debt is going to be around $37 trillion. It is going up exponentially. And yet you're telling me that if you increase the marginal income tax rate on the richest Americans by like 4 or 5%, that's going to do a dime's bit of difference. Everybody knows this is a spending problem. This is not a revenue problem. Revenue to the federal government has never been higher. What you're talking about, right, and by revenue to the federal government, it's such a euphemism. The federal government doesn't have revenue. It has tax seizures. Revenue implies that they are providing a service in return for the taxation. They are not. They are redistributing the income or wasting it on a bunch of stupid things the federal government has no business being in. If I make revenue at my company, it's because I sold something. It's because you bought something. If the federal government takes in revenue, it's because it pointed a gun at you and took your cash. But the lie that the federal government tells right now is, and that Kamala Harris presumably will tell, is that she's going to fix all of our fiscal problems by increasing tax rates. Now, what's actually going to happen is what has typically happened when you increase marginal tax rates. Economic activity tends to go down. And when that happens, revenues grow lower. But the great truth of Democratic tax policy, it has never been about increasing revenue to the federal government. It has always been about punishing success. Barack Obama let the cat out of the bag way back in 2008 about this. He was specifically asked in a debate, I think this is one of the most important political moments of my lifetime, he was asked in a debate that nobody remembers about whether he would increase the capital gains tax, even if it meant less revenue to the government. In other words, would he increase the tax rate even if it meant the government took in less money? He said yes for purposes of fairness. In other words, punish people who make money. Punish them. That is Kamala Harris's actual political philosophy. It'd be great to get her to answer some questions on that. She, for example, wants to let the Trump tax cuts expire. According to the Wall Street Journal, she wants to increase taxes by about $5 trillion over the next decade and then cut other taxes supposedly by more than $4 trillion. The cut taxes are not actually cuts to taxes. They are just redistribution. Very often when Democrats talk about cutting taxes, they're talking about, for example, earned income tax credits that actually are not weighed against earned income. In other words, they're just checks that are being cut to people. Folks, they're so dishonest. These are not tax cuts. Many of them are just redistribution. But the dishonesty has consequences. That's true also in terms of crime. Kamala Harris has flipped her position 27 times on whether you need more police officers in high crime communities. Would you feel safer with Kamala Harris as president? I wouldn't, which is why I trust Berna. I'm about as pro-Second Amendment as it gets. But the thought of using lethal force, not ideal for everybody. That's why you need to check out Berna. Introducing the Berna Ungun, the non-lethal self-defense platform. Lightweight, simple to use. It uses an easy-to-load 5-round magazine. It's powered by an 8-gram CO2 cartridge. Berna launchers fire a 68 caliber chemical-filled projectile using patented pull-pierce technology where the CO2 canister is only punctured on the very first trigger pull. That means your launcher is always at the ready. It's capable of incapacitating an attacker for over 30 minutes. It's accurate and effective at over 60 feet. No permits, no background checks. It's interstate travel friendly. With Berna, you will be prepared to defend. The Berna is a safer, more sensible alternative that could potentially save lives on both sides, protecting both the user and the aggressor. No mistakes with the Berna. Visit Berna.com/Ben for 10% off your purchase. That's BYRNA.com/Ben. Check out the latest news about Berna. That's BYRNA.com/Ben. Under her plan, taxes will go up sharply on some high-income households. Top marginal tax rates would reach their highest point since 1986. She also wants to push, as we have mentioned before, a 25% unrealized capital gains tax, which is totally insane. If you're worth over $100 million, right, and by worth, we just mean on paper, and you're privately holding your company, for example, and your company is, say, worth $1 billion, that means that $900 million of that worth will now be taxed at 25%, even though you've never sold a dime of the stock and you haven't taken the company public, which means you bankrupt the company and the person immediately. It's total idiocy. So she has endorsed Biden's proposed tax increases. She says she's not going to raise taxes on the middle class. That's a lie. She for sure will. Joe Biden would have done the same exact thing if he didn't have to face down the prospect of a Republican House. And that, of course, is exactly correct. You know, the corporations, she wants to increase the corporate tax rate to 28%. It is currently 21%, which is absolutely absurd. Remember, every tax a corporation pays is money taken off the top line before they pay their employees. It means wages go down because there is less money to go around to pay. Large companies would pay a 21% minimum tax instead of the current 15%. The Rate Coalition, a group of companies including Target and Altria, says, quote, Vice President Harris's campaign pledge to raise the federal corporate tax rate to 28% would have devastating consequences, resulting in higher prices, lower wages, and fewer jobs. And then she's telling the same lie that Joe Biden is telling about how if you make under $400,000, your taxes won't go up. That, of course, is a lie. That's not going to be how it goes. Other forms of tax will certainly increase. Meanwhile, she, of course, is attempting to pay off all the blue states. So one of the things that the Trump tax plan did is it got rid of SALT, the state and local tax deduction. The state and local tax deduction was a Democrat-pushed theory that suggested that if you paid a high marginal income tax rate in California, that was deductible against your income before you took federal tax. Why did they do that? Because, effectively speaking, that meant that these states like Florida that have a 0% income tax rate are subsidizing states like California. California got to take off the top before people measured their income for federal income tax. Well, the Trump tax plan got rid of that. It meant that even for people like me, when I was living in California, my taxes actually went up under Trump's tax cuts because my tax to the state of California was no longer deductible against my federal tax. Now, Democrats want to get rid of that because, of course, the entire goal here is to pay off their friends and harm their enemies. That is precisely Kamala Harris's tax plan. Should she be asked about that? Sure. Will she be? Highly doubt it. It's pretty incredible. Meanwhile, the Kamala Harris campaign continues to futz around on whether a debate will even take place on September 10th. So Trump has, again, doubled down. He said, listen, I already agreed to this ABC debate. I don't know why they keep trying to change the terms. I already agreed to this. I don't know what they want from me here. He put out a statement saying, quote, I have reached an agreement with the radical left Democrats for a debate with Comrade Kamala Harris. It will be broadcast live on ABC Fake News, by far the nastiest and most unfair newscaster in the business, Tuesday, September 10th in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The rules will be the same as the last CNN debate, which seems to work out well for everyone except perhaps crooked Joe Biden. The debate will be stand-up. Candidates cannot bring notes or cheat sheets. We have also been given assurance by ABC this will be fair and equitable debate. Neither side will be given the questions in advance. No Donna Brazile. That is a reference back to 2016 when the supposition was that Donna Brazile had handed over questions to the Hillary campaign. Harris would not agree to the Fox News debate on September 4th, but that date will be held open in case she changes her mind or flip-flops, as she has done on every single one of her long-held and cherished policy beliefs. A possible third debate, which would go to NBC Fake News, has not been agreed to by the radical left. God bless America. And so in other words, she's running from debates. Consistently. The Kamala Harris campaign, however, has said that they have not yet agreed to the terms of the debate. They might want to keep the mics open. Listen, Democrats won't even agree to the terms of the debate. This is all a mess. It's all a mess. But you know what shouldn't be a mess? Your health. Listen, I've got a busy schedule. I'm flying around the country for work. I'm constantly on the go. I need to keep my health at its tip-top despite all of those obligations. I exercise a lot. I try to get enough sleep. Don't do amazing on that. I eat well. Balance of nature fits directly into my day-to-day. Imagine trying to eat 31 different fruits and veggies every day. It sounds miserable and time-consuming. With Balance of Nature fruits and veggies, there's never been a more convenient dietary supplement to ensure you get a wide variety of fruits and vegetables daily. Balance of Nature takes fruits and veggies, they freeze-dry them, they turn them into a powder, and they put them into a capsule. You take your fruit and veggie capsules every day, and then your body knows what to do with them. They are kosher, which means that I can just put those right in the protein smoothie, and that is why I'm just buff beyond all measure. Go to balanceofnature.com, use promo code Shapiro for 35% off your first order as a preferred customer, plus get a free bottle of fiber and spice. That's balanceofnature.com, promo code Shapiro. Again, you don't want to be choking down 31 fruits and veggies every day. That sounds awful. Instead, head on over to balanceofnature.com, use promo code Shapiro, get 35% off that first order as a preferred customer, and get a free bottle of fiber and spice. Balanceofnature.com, promo code Shapiro. So remember, it was the Democrats originally who insisted on muting the mics because they were afraid that Joe Biden would get discombobulated by other people talking in his ear while he was talking. So they had the mics muted, and then it was really bad for him. So now they want to reverse the rules. And now they're saying that Donald Trump is chickening out unless he lets them reverse the rules. Again, the way that Democrats work is they set the rules. And if you buck that, that means that you're a chicken. It means that you hate democracy. If you just don't wish to abide by their rules, you hate democracy. As we'll see in a second, they are perfectly fine with thwarting democracy at every possible turn for their own political benefit. These great defenders of democracy. Now, here's James Carville spelling out what the strategy is in trying to leave the mics open.
I wish they'd let Trump speak over because he's so rude and people don't like it. And she is much better equipped to handle that than, say, President Biden was. So any chance, any opportunity you give Trump to be rude, I think you should give it to him. But I'm not that hung up on cut microphone or on microphone or anything like that. I don't think that's particularly determinative here. But I just assume give him every opportunity to be the jerk he is.
Again, this is their entire plan. Their entire plan is they want the moment. They want the moment from that horrible, stupid Kamala Harris versus Mike Pence debate in which everyone, because we're a dumb country, focused on a fly on Mike Pence's head rather than the fact that Kamala Harris is a full-scale equity-first socialist. Here's Al Franken, former Minnesota senator and CNN panel, saying what they really want is for Kamala Harris to get interrupted by Trump so she can do the I'm speaking. He's mansplaining to me. I am female. Hear me roar that I'm a victim.
will it matter that he can speak while she's speaking?
I mean, I think it could as a parlor game, but voters aren't focused on that.
Okay, well, let me play.
If there's an audience,
let me play and take you guys down memory lane. Just the I'm speaking of it all is one of the things that perhaps the Harris campaign wants to recreate.
Absolutely. No, but Susan, this is important.
Susan,
I want to add, Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking. I'm speaking.
Yeah, you can have 15 more seconds, and then we'll give the Vice President a chance to.
Joe Biden has been very clear. He will not raise taxes on anybody who makes less than $400,000 a year.
He said he's going to repeal the Trump tax cuts.
Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking.
Well, wait.
I'm speaking.
It'd be important if you said the truth. Is he only going to repeal part of the Trump tax cuts?
If you don't mind letting me finish, we can then have a conversation, okay?
Please.
Okay. Let's talk about the fact. Yeah, I'm about to. I mean, it was iconic.
God, she's so obnoxious. She's so obnoxious, and they're begging for it. They're begging for this obnoxious bull. They're begging for it. They want it so desperately. They want Kamala Harris to schoolmarm Donald Trump. I don't think it's going to go quite the way they think it's going to go, by the way. I don't think Americans like that kind of stuff. I think that it was really off-putting for most people when they saw Kamala Harris going, to Mike Pence, the most polite person in the history of American politics. It was ridiculous then. It's ridiculous now. Meanwhile, J.D. Vance saying the things that have to be said on the campaign trail. He points out, hey, by the way, I noticed that you're presenting her as candidate of mystery. Hasn't she been the vice president for the last 3.5 years?
My favorite line from Kamala is she says, if you elect her president, she is going to fix it all on day one. Well, Kamala, I hate to break it to you, but day one was 1,300 days ago. You've been vice president for 3.5 years. What the hell have you been doing during all that time?
That would be the big question. It would be. But the media are too busy covering for her. They're too busy pretending that she is actually not the vice president of the United States. And one interview, a joint interview with her dad protector, Tim Walz, that ain't going to do it. And if it does, honestly, I keep saying this over and over, but it's true. If the American people are so stupid that they fall for the idea that Kamala Harris is some sort of mysterious candidate about whom they know nothing, after years in the public eye, after reversing every position, after lying consistently, and after being the current vice president of the United States, I'm just going to keep quoting Mencken until the cows come home. Democracy is the theory that the common people know what they want and deserve to get it good and hard. If that's what you want, you will get it good and hard. Meanwhile, Democrats continue to claim that they are the party of democracy. I have some proof that that is not, in fact, the case. I'll get to that momentarily. First, for a very limited time, again, get 35% off new Daily Wire Plus annual memberships with code FIGHT when you go to dailywire.com/subscribe. Every single day at the Daily Wire, we are fighting the left and building the future. We've taken on some huge battles, like when we sued the Biden administration over mandatory COVID vaccines, and we won. I, of course, have testified before Congress against the global media cartel GARM that was censoring conservative voices, and guess what? We dismantled it. Now we are shaking up Hollywood with our first nationwide theatrical release, Am I Racist? That's Matt Walsh's DEI-busting comedy. It's hitting theaters September 13th. I should add, theaters are selling out across the country. Here's the truth. We can only do this because of our members. This is why we need your help. When we fight, we win, but we need you in the battle with us. Join Daily Wire Plus today. Stand with us in the fight. Get 35% off your new annual membership with code FIGHT. Now remember, Democrats say that they must be elected because Donald Trump is an opponent of democracy. He hates democracy. It must be defended from the likes of the bad orange man. Okay, well, RFK Jr. was a third-party candidate. He was, and then he dropped out, and he endorsed Donald Trump. You remember, he tried to run originally as a Democrat in the primaries. They rigged the primary process, so RFK Jr. could not participate, and they rigged it so that Joe Biden would win. Then they decided to coup him out in favor of Kamala Harris without a single vote. Again, that's what makes the coup so astonishing. It's not just that he won primaries and then he was supplanted. It's that they rigged the process to prevent all possible opposition. They rigged it to stop anyone legitimate from getting in against Joe Biden. They threatened and cajoled anyone who might get in against Joe Biden and provide an actual alternative just to earn him the nomination. And then immediately they swapped him out, which is truly an amazing feat of legerdemain. Truly amazing stuff right there from the Democrats. Anyway, RFK Jr. steps out of the race. He endorses Donald Trump, and he announced yesterday that Trump had asked him to be on the transition team.
I've been asked to go onto the transition team and, to help pick the people who will be running the government. And I'm looking forward to that.
Okay, so not only has he dropped out, not only has he endorsed Trump, he will be on Trump's transition team. He said he was going to move to withdraw his name from the ballot in 10 states, 10 swing states. Now, here's the thing. He's not running. He's not running, correct? Every vote on a ballot for RFK Jr. is a wasted vote, a literal wasted vote, because there is no possibility that he can be elected president of the United States. He's not even running in a bunch of states. He has explicitly asked himself to be taken off the ballot. So what are Democrats doing? They're maintaining his name on the ballot. That's how much they love democracy. They want you to waste your vote on a person who actively withdrew and endorsed another nominee. Do you understand how anti-democratic that is? That's nuts. That's crazy. They are actively moving to keep what is, in fact, a dead vote on the ballot. That's what Democrats are doing. Don't worry, they love democracy. Your vote must count, especially for the person who's not even running. I repeat, it's totally crazy. He himself asked Wisconsin and Michigan to take him off the ballot because he's not running in Wisconsin or Michigan, and he doesn't want to take votes away from Donald Trump. And Democrats who are in charge of the electoral mechanisms in Wisconsin and Michigan turned him down and said, your name will stay on the ballot, even though you have asked that it not even be on the ballot, so that people will make a mistake maybe and think and then vote for you. Absolutely nuts. According to Axios, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. will be on the ballot in the battlegrounds of Michigan and Wisconsin in November, even though he has suspended his bid and backed former President Trump. Kennedy suspended his campaign to avoid taking votes from Trump. Now his name will appear on the ballot in the very states that could decide the election. Kennedy has been removed in Arizona, Nevada, and Pennsylvania. He will apparently stay on the ballot also in North Carolina, a super competitive state. A combination of state laws and overdue deadlines explains why Kennedy is unable to remove his name from the ballot in some states. Sherry Hardman, senior press secretary for Michigan Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson, who is a Democrat, of course, said a minor party candidate cannot withdraw in Michigan. Meanwhile, the Wisconsin Election Commission voted on Tuesday 5-1 to reject Kennedy's request to withdraw from the ballot. So they are keeping him on the ballot, even though he cannot even really receive votes. He's not a candidate. Meanwhile, the same people who are attempting to keep RFK Jr.'s dead candidacy on the ballot, they're attempting to force Cornel West and his live candidacy off the ballot. According to WDET.org, quote, independent presidential candidate Cornel West must appear on the ballot in the battleground state of Michigan. A judge ruled about a week after West was disqualified. In Michigan, the state Democratic Party, Democratic Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson, and a voter backed by a Democratic-aligned PAC had challenged West's candidacy. So remember, Jocelyn Benson is the same person who just said 1 second ago, RFK is a minor party candidate. He must stay on the ballot, even though he doesn't want to be on the ballot. She is trying to get Cornel West kicked off the ballot, even though he does want to be on the ballot. Do you understand this is how democracy works, according to Democrats? Vote for us or it's not democracy. They're literally attempting to rig the process in Michigan this way. That's insane. They're doing it right out in the open. They're not even trying to hide it. Jocelyn Benson is so corrupt that she is trying to maintain RFK Jr. on the ballot in Michigan after he withdrew from the race. And she is trying to get Cornel West kicked off the ballot in Michigan, even though he wants to stay in the race. Why? Because if RFK Jr.'s name is on the ballot, some Republicans might vote for him. And if Cornel West's name is on the ballot, some Democrats might vote for him. Totally insane. Totally crazy. Cornel West, by the way, revealed on a podcast that the Democrats had just basically offered to pay off all his bills if he would drop out.
Were you offered a position in the Harris administration? Any financial incentives to drop out?
Oh, I mean, there was definitely various kind of offers. I won't go into concrete details of it. I really won't, because I don't even want to make that the focus.
Well, let's just say they did not offer you the janitor's position. They offered you something relatively high up.
Well, I don't think it was that high up.
Did they offer you a cabinet position, a lower position, and offer to pay off any of your campaign debt?
Well, they offered serious substantive conversation about all of those.
Unbelievable. So they were offering to pay Cornel West off. And at the same time, they were trying to throw him off the ballot in various states. They love democracy. That's the thing about the Democrats. They really, truly love democracy. In fact, they love democracy so much that they have been manipulating social media all over the place for years. So as we pointed out yesterday on the show, Mark Zuckerberg issued a public letter, to the House Judiciary Chairman Jim Jordan, admitting that Meta, which owns Facebook, erred in acquiescing to government pressure for censorship. So Zuckerberg conceded that there was a lot of government pressure for censorship. He said it was our decision whether or not to take the content down, and we own our decisions. But in reality, the government was pressuring them. Now, the reason that Zuckerberg said that it was their own decision is because if, in fact, it is seen that Facebook is some sort of government mechanism, then it can be regulated as a government mechanism and or held liable for damages. Okay, but it is pretty astonishing, that letter, and demonstrates once again, Democrats are perfectly happy with grabbing control of the mechanisms of the dissemination of information. All of us on the right know about it. They try to do it with GARM by basically cudgeling advertisers into not spending money on any show to the right of Karl Marx. They've done it with social media, where they put extraordinary restrictions on any right-wing content. They've forced companies like ours to police ourselves for basic matters of facts that they just don't want broadcast. Like really, really basic stuff that I can't say on YouTube, for example, for fear that we'll get yellow or red flagged. All of this is part of a broader attempt to cudgel people into avoiding free speech. And that's part of a broader international attempt to shut down free speech on behalf of the left. The Wall Street Journal has a good piece from the editorial board today talking about the arrest of Telegram CEO Pavel Durov over the weekend. So conservatives in the U.S. are rallying around Durov. Telegram's largely hands-off approach to moderating content has made it popular among terrorists as well as genuine political dissidents. Journalists use the app to communicate with sources, though terrorist groups and authoritarian governments also use it to spread propaganda, as Russia has in Ukraine. Paris prosecutors say Durov was detained in relation to an investigation into criminal activity on the platform, but many suspect this is merely a pretext because Europe is also imposing speech controls on other media platforms. France in 2020 sought to require sites to remove hate speech, though most of its law was blocked by the country's top court. The European Parliament then stepped into the breach with its Digital Services Act, which compels platforms to curb harmful content, including so-called hate speech, disinformation, and propaganda. The European Commission is conducting stress tests to ensure platforms police quote-unquote harmful content. Companies can be fined up to 6% of their worldwide revenue if deemed non-compliant. Thierry Breton issued an actual threat to Elon Musk, as you will recall, right before Musk did a recent live stream on X.com with Donald Trump. Quote, I understand you are currently doing a stress test of the platform. In this context, I'm compelled to remind you of the due diligence obligations set out in the Digital Services Act, wrote Mr. Breton. As the Wall Street Journal says, this is thuggish stuff. European regulators are trying to meddle in the U.S. presidential election, yet the missive drew nary a peep from the Biden administration. This is the reason why a lot of people are very skeptical of the arrest of Pavel Durov, for example. So, all the friends of democracy, they're perfectly fine with keeping candidates who don't want to be on the ballot in order to ensure that votes don't go to Donald Trump. They're perfectly fine with kicking Cornel West or Jill Stein off the ballot, even if they want to be on the ballot, because those votes might be taken away from Kamala Harris. They wish to manipulate or pressure social media to the best of their full ability. And, of course, they are manipulating the judicial system. So, Jack Smith has now unveiled new charges against Donald Trump. Remember, folks, this election ain't even close to over. September 18th, Donald Trump has a judicial hearing in which he may be sentenced to jail time in the middle of the electoral cycle. That is a thing that absolutely could happen. And by the way, if Donald Trump crushes Kamala Harris in the debate on September 10th, it would not shock me at all if Judge Juan Merchan in New York sentenced him to actual jail time in an attempt to rig the election on behalf of Kamala Harris. That would be little to no surprise at all. Well, now, special counsel Jack Smith, according to the Wall Street Journal, filed a revised indictment that accuses Trump of trying to undo his 2020 election loss, saying the case remains largely intact, even after the Supreme Court's July ruling that former presidents enjoy sweeping immunity for acts they take while in office. With the new indictment, Trump faces the same 4 federal offenses he was originally charged with, but Smith said the government refashioned the case to conform to the Supreme Court's holding. Presidents can't be prosecuted for exercising core constitutional powers. Now, again, this is not a shock. It was pretty well predicted. And I said at the time, the Supreme Court came down with its executive immunity ruling, that all that meant is that this would be kicked back down to the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, and then it would probably be refiled at some point in order to avoid the implications of the actual ruling by the Supreme Court. However, Jack Smith is not going to let go. He's like a bulldog here. He's a terrier. This is why special counsels very often are a waste of space and really should be answerable to the DOJ, because once they start digging, it is literally their job to find pay dirt pretty much no matter what. So, stellar stuff from Jack Smith, using the legal system against Donald Trump, rigging social media against Donald Trump, rigging the actual ballot listings against Donald Trump. So many friends of democracy in the Democratic Party. Really, really astonishing stuff. Okay, meanwhile, over in Florida, Donald Trump has been expressing some discontent with regard to Amendment 4 in Florida. So Donald Trump doesn't really know how to handle the abortion issue, right? Obviously, he's been futzing around on it. The actual answer to the abortion issue from Donald Trump typically has been, although not explained particularly well, that it is no longer a federal issue. Roe versus Wade kicked it back to the states. The states should decide on a state-by-state issue. As president of the United States, he has no intention of signing any federal legislation into law the Supreme Court has already deemed a state's issue, right? That's the easy way out. That's what he's attempting to do. Even J.D. Vance, who's very pro-life, has said that. However, Donald Trump is now afraid, apparently, to sound off on Amendment 4 in the state of Florida. Amendment 4 in the state of Florida is a statewide constitutional proposed amendment that would effectively legalize abortion to point of birth. So Florida has a heartbeat bill. It's illegal to go get an abortion, except in extraordinary circumstances, after fetal heartbeat. There's still a lot of abortions in the state of Florida, but that is the actual law in the state of Florida and has been for a year and a half or so. Democrats are trying to jog their voter participation by putting Amendment 4 on the ballot. Amendment 4 suggests that effectively there should be no limitations on abortion. Amendment 4 is not just a reversion back to the 15-week standard that obtained before the 6-week standard was put in place in Florida. It blows out all standards on abortion completely. It is a George Soros-funded amendment. It would allow late-term abortions all the way up to month 9 of pregnancy. Also, Florida currently has a legal requirement that parents consent before minors get an abortion. Amendment 4 gets rid of that. Finally, Amendment 4 also says that healthcare practitioners, not just doctors, can perform abortions. So anybody basically can perform an abortion. So the easy answer here for Donald Trump when asked how he would vote on that in the state of Florida is, I would vote against that amendment because it's so damned radical. Even if I disagree with the heartbeat bill, I'm not going to vote for something that allows abortion all the way up to 9 months and then enshrines it in the Constitution of the state of Florida. That's the actual answer that Donald Trump should give. I hope that he does, because obviously he's been giving a lot of kind of bad signs to the pro-life community. A lot of people in the pro-life community pissed off at Donald Trump's position on national legislation with regards to abortion, a position that, again, I'm a pro-lifer, so I fully sympathize with that idea. I also understand where Donald Trump is coming from on a national level, but this is not a national referendum. This is a state referendum. So you should say, listen, Roe versus Wade kicked it back to the states. The state of Florida has a heartbeat bill. The state of Florida, I'm a voter there. I don't believe in abortion to point of birth. This amendment enshrines abortion to point of birth in the Constitution. I'll oppose it. It's that simple. That's what he should do. Alrighty, coming up, we'll be joined by Robbie Starbuck, who has been doing amazing work in going after woke corporations. First, if you're not a member, become a member. Use code Shapiro at checkout for 2 months free on all annual plans. Click that link in the description and join us.
Republicans are Nazis. You cannot separate yourselves from the bad white people.
Growing up, I never thought much about race. It never really seemed to matter that much, at least not to me. Am I racist?
I would really appreciate it if you left.
I'm trying to learn. I'm on this journey. If I'm going to sort this out, I need to go deeper undercover.
They gonna say I'm racist.
Joining us now is Matt, certified DEI expert.
Here's my certification. And what you're doing is you're stretching out of your whiteness. This is more for you in this field. Is America inherently racist?
The word inherent is challenging there.
I want to rename the George Washington Monument to the George Floyd Monument.
America is racist to its bones.
So inherently.
Yeah, this country is a piece of
white
folks,
white
trash, white supremacy, white woman, white boy.
Is there a black person around here? What's a black person right here? Does he not exist?
They gonna say I'm racist.
Hi, Robin.
Hi, what's your name?
I'm Matt.
Just had to ask who you are because you have to be careful.
Never be too careful.
They gonna say you racist.
Buy your tickets now. In theaters September 13th. Rated PG-13.